Distinguished guests, dear colleagues, dear students, good morning. On behalf of the Rector Marcello Fontanesi and in my role of Rector's Delegate for International Affairs, it's indeed a great pleasure and a privilege for me to welcome Mrs. Rashida Manjoo at the University of Milano-Bicocca. Mrs. Rashida Manjoo, Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women for the United Nations Human Rights Council, is here today to share with us her experience and tackle an important issue we all have to be aware of: gender-based violence, and more specifically, violence on women in Italy. There are many different kinds of violence everywhere in the world, but with a common denominator. At all latitudes, violence is always the manifestation of unequal power relations. Every day, we witness physical and psychological violence perpetrated against women and children, and social and political violence against the weak, the poor, the illiterate. In both cases, the exercise of power results in abuses and severe crimes often underestimates that we have to fight with all our strength for their eradication. Women seldom rise, they hardly ever participate side by side with men in social and political fights against oppression and tyranny. This is often the result of main chauvinist culture, which has conditioned and relegated women in a role of secondary importance for centuries. I'm a doctor, and sometimes I compare violence to a disease. Violence can show different symptoms, not only the awful violence that, like an epidemic, is widespread, for example, in African countries. Violence can also be shifty and deceitful, a cancer that undetermines our society, but is also an incurable disease, and we must find treatments and effective diagnostic tools. Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, Article 3 says, "Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person." Article 5 says, "No one shall be subjected to torture, to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment." Nevertheless, 64 years later, in our so-called civilized society, we increasingly assist to gender-based violence, a major public health concern and violation of human rights. Women are victims of rapes, mutilations, domestic violence, honor killings, limitation to personal freedom, trafficking, stalking, limited access to education and public services. In Italy, violence is mostly perpetrated by someone close to the victim, not the stranger of sexual harasser media want to depict. The highest percentage of violence takes place in safe locations, such as homes, workplace, cars. Years ago, women hardly ever disclosed what had happened to them. They generally did not report to the police or seek help and assistance from social services. However, the reporting rate is slowly increasing, thanks to the implementation of the new laws and assistance and higher consciousness. It is worth remembering that in Italy, women gained the right to vote only in 1946, and we still require specific laws, such as the recent law on female quota, to impose something that a civil country should take for granted. Women still have a long way to go before our society really considers them equal to men, and education is a milestone for the success of their struggle for equality. The University of Milano-Bicocca attaches great importance to parity and is strongly committed to fostering equality at all levels. We believe that implementing any opportunities of knowledge sharing is fundamental. is fundamental in order to achieving higher levels of consciousness, dialogue, and understanding. The right to education and higher education is a universal entitlement that cannot be renounced and is a weapon against abuses. Scholar first and university later play an indispensable role in our struggle for parity. Thank you, and welcome to the meeting. Buongiorno, e do la parola alla collega professoressa Calloni.